So this is the first, and apologies for all these like confusion and a little bit of kerfuffle going on. But this is the first ever ArtSci Salon, quote unquote, post-pandemic. So it's a little bit of trial and error. But I'm so happy that we are doing this in a hybrid version, and then eventually we will do more in the next few months and years. So my name is Roberta Buiani. Some people don't know me in the audience. Most people do. I'm the artistic director of the ArtSci Salon, which is a program dedicated to facilitating dialogues between artists, scientists, technologists, activists, and indigenous scholars, and more, and animals, and non-human. And for those people who don't know, but I see that people have coffee, the people in person can enjoy some chocolate of good quality, and people are nodding, and some coffee and some fruit. Just so you know for next time. And I would like to do the land acknowledgement. I wish to acknowledge the land on which the University of Toronto, where we are here, operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississauga of the Credit. Today, the meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. And I encourage you who are joining us from home to think about the land that you're occupying and the territories that you call home. So this event is not just a regular ArtSci Salon, but is part of a series called Re-Situating, More Than Human. It is an interdisciplinary program bringing together academic, scientists, indigenous thinkers, artists, and the general public to rethink ways to engage with the world of plants and other vegetable life. What we call the vegetable more than human. Re-Situating is a collaboration also between the ArtSci Salon, led by me, and which is also hosted at the Fields Institute here and at U of T, and the Slolab, which is led by Jane Tingley, who is joining us from home, whom you will see if you're coming to the next events. But today she couldn't join. So in addition to taking place here at the Fields Institute, we also have planned a field trip to the Rare Charitable Research Reserve in Cambridge, Ontario. And here at the Fields Institute, we will have 3 events. This is the first one. We will have another roundtable on April the 14th, similar to this one, on symbiosis. And then we will have, and I hope that everybody will join us, we will have a poetry night with performances and projection mapping made by a local artist who is joining us here today, Kavi. And I'm really looking forward to it because it's going to be a site-specific event. And unfortunately, I'm telling you this because that event will be recorded, but it won't be streamed for obvious reasons because of the complexity of the event on its own. This series of events is also complementary to an exhibition which is on display at the on-site gallery, which is near OCAD. It's on 199 Richmond Street West, called The Non-Human, and it is curated by Jane Tingley. And it's gonna be up until May 13th. So please go and check it out. Next time we have the event, I will bring some booklets. I didn't bring them today because it's just miserable outside. So the program's activities here at Fields extends the themes of the exhibition, emphasize their relevance beyond the arts, and foster dialogues across disciplines and worldviews. So our program is guided by several questions, and some of the questions will be asked today. With Re-Situating, we aim to reimagine and somehow recalibrate our relation with the natural world, be it plants, water, insects, animals, and people. And we want to create dialogues between different disciplinary realms, different perspectives, and different positionalities. Our main question for this session will be, what does it mean to develop an ethics of inclusion and care that sees humans and non-humans' life as equal? And you will see that the presenters for today have different notions of what is care and what it means to do ethics of care or work of care in their professional field and in their relationship with their specimens or in their relationship with other people working with them. So I don't want to say anything else because then I would be redundant, but I would like to introduce the speakers. So we will go in order. So because Grace Grothaus, who is our artist, is joining us from home, and so she will present from home, we decided that she's going to be the last one. So we will proceed with Karine Gagné, and then, sorry, Keiko Yoshoka, and then Grace Grothaus. So I don't know if I should, maybe I should introduce the three of them, and then we will just go just go with the slideshows. So Karine Gagné is an associate professor in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology at the University of Guelph. Her research is based in the Indian Himalayas, where she studies a range of issues, including climate change, ethics of care, human-animal relations, state production, citizenship, and climate knowledge. She is the author of Caring for Glaciers, Land, Animals, and Humanity in the Himalayas, published by the University of Washington Press. She is working. This is so interesting when I read this. Oh my God, I totally wanna read it when it comes out. She's working on a graphic ethnography that builds on 5 years of participatory visual research done with guides and porters from the frozen Zanskar River, the main route to travel in and out of the region of Zanskar in the Himalayas in winter. So like, this is so exciting. I so totally want to see it when it comes out. Please let us know. And by the way, I read the introduction of her book, and I think that between what she has to say and the slides that she provided beforehand, this will be like a treat. So thank you so much for joining us from Guelph with this very awful kind of wintry weather, but yeah, thank you. Here you go.
Thank you, Roberta, for the introduction. It's really nice. And thank you, Jane, also for the invitation, Jane and Roberta, to participate in this event. Yes, so as Roberta mentioned, I'm an anthropologist. I work with Tibetan Buddhist community in the Indian Himalayas. The place where I do research is called Ladakh. In Ladakh, glaciers are central to people's subsistence as they constitute the main source of water. And my work examines how agropastoralist communities are impacted by climate change, including glacier recession, and how they are tending to their herds of animals in the context of a changing economy that renders domesticated animals, sheep and goats and yak and zo, increasingly redundant to the household economy. So I have a slideshow here. It's like, there's nothing that will really like align and match what I'm presenting. It's just to give you an idea of the place and then the work and the sort of landscape. So the notion of ethic of care that I mobilize in my work, not working. Here? Working? Not working. Maybe I need to switch it on. Maybe I can use the keyboard.
Go, get over it. Take a look. There you go.
Thank you. Let me just try. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so the notion of ethic of care that I mobilize in my work is emerging from my interlocutor's approach to care. So in this presentation today, I will walk you through how Ladakhis are defining care, more specifically in relation to their surrounding environment. And I should mention here that what I'm presenting today is emerging from my work with Ladakhis of an older generation. So while the perspective of these elders may be similar or at times different from the perspective of younger generation, it should be emphasized that elders' perspective is anchored in their life trajectory in a context of changing political and economic order and their own concern as an aging generation of agropastoralists. So to think through this, we may ask a question. So why are the glaciers of Ladakh receding? And here I will answer this question by considering vernacular's ideas about care. So the scientific outlook on glaciers is generally turned towards the global. So there is no exact science to assess the recession of the glaciers of the Himalaya and the rhythm at which they are doing so. But the notion that the recession of glaciers is an outcome of something which is taking place on the global scene, anthropogenic climate change, is generally accepted. But for the elders of Ladakh, the answer is not located at the global level. Rather, glaciers are seen as receding because a certain ethic of care for the land, for the animals, and for the local deities is receding. So why is this ethic of care eroding? While the ethical responsibility towards the land has traditionally been anchored in agrarian and pastoralist work, today a younger generation have other aspirations. And as a result, an aging generation of Ladakhi live with the predicament and dilemma that emerge as an agropastoralist economy is being displaced and as a related knowledge and community arrangement are eroding. And this is one of the reasons why, according to many elders, glaciers are receding, because elders are forced to sell their sheep, goats, and larger herds of yak and zo, as there is a lack of workforce in the villages to look after them. And many see in people's disengagement from pastoralist activities one more step towards the decline in moral value. As one man told me, it's only because I'm old that I cannot go in the mountains anymore with the animals. In fact, when Ladakhi talk about the reasons for the change in their environment, and this could be like receding glaciers, but also eroding mountain vegetation, erratic meteorological conditions, and drying water sources, they frequently explain them as the result of people failing to fulfill their responsibility or being careless. And the idea of being careless in the local idiom, it's like they say tzana metkam, which is literally translated as being careless or having no care. So this ethic of care must also be considered in light of the fact that domesticated animals are seen to contribute to the fortune of human. So elders' correlation of the decreased presence of animal with the degradation of the environment is very common. Reflecting on the causes of glacier recession, an elderly woman who spent her life in the mountain with the animals told me, people are unfortunate nowadays. In those days, the people were fortunate, even though they did not have a good education. They were fortunate because they had cattle. So the same argument is also often foregrounded when it comes to the cultivated land. So facing a lack of workforce, many families are now cultivated only part of their land estate. And elders often refer to this as abandoning the land and link this to broader changes in the environment. And then here I ask, how does one foster, cultivate, and maintain an ethic of care? And while there's a lot that has been written on ethic as the purview of religious doctrine in the Himalayas, I learned from living and learning from Ladakhis over the years that this ethic is both anchored in practical activities through which people engage with the environment and informed by beliefs about beliefs and idea about the non-human world. So it develops in part through human actions in the world, for instance, in nurturing the land through cultivation, herding animals to pasture, and a wide range of other actions meant to ensure the reproduction and vitality of the non-human world. So to make sense of my interlocutor's approach to care, I place practical interaction with the environment and ideas about the non-human world, informed by sometimes religion and traditions, on equal footing in the shaping of an ethic of care. So the point here is that the idea of an ethic of care here is something that is nurtured not only like in the context of religious practice, as often described within the context of the Himalaya, but as I argue, like through the mundane activities, or like to make this specific to the case of Ladakh by doing agro-pastoralist work or farming the land. But I learned from Ladakhi that it's important to pay attention to the embodied practices of ethical engagement that characterize life and work in the mountain. And because in particular, it reveals the realm of affect that developed through work in the mountains. So as we may therefore think of this kind of ethic as an embodied ethic. So according to what I learned from Ladakhi over the years, the embodied experiences of life and work in the mountain, along with ideas about nature, play a central role in the shaping and the nurturing of this ethic of care. And these practices cannot be divorced from the inward disposition that informed them, because Ladakhi will often express the idea that today people, although sometimes will play, sometimes people will pray or even like do this labor of like going with the animal or the land, they do so with an empty art. And then the point here is that like to be potent, all of that has to be like coming from the heart. So to illustrate how this is sort of taking shape in how people are related to the Ladakh as a place, I'd like to discuss the relationship that Ladakhi developed with glaciers by presenting the case of two glaciers. And those are glaciers that we can listen to. So they are making noise and sounds. So Ladakhi knowledge about glaciers is developing through mountain travel. And a physical proximity with glacier, and is intertwined with emotions and sensory perceptions. And here, intimacy, feelings, and subjectivities are all central to the relations that people are forming with glaciers and the knowledge that emerges from these encounters. And then to appreciate this, we need to remember that epistemologies of natures are multiple, and some form of knowledge are deeply intimate and contribute to inform an ethic of care. So over the years, I collected many narratives about Ladakhi's encounter with glaciers, and which demonstrates how people can develop a deep connection with the summits that surround them. And these affective encounters, as narrated by Ladakhi, compel us to cultivate a different kind of imagination for the Himalaya and its glacier. So beyond the limits imposed by technological and political imperative, we can take the case of Ladakh and then of affective encounter with glacier, and this teaches us about a place, its environment, its people, and how they are, all of this is intricately linked to how people make sense of changing glacier today. So let me present the tale of the silent glaciers. In the Himalayas, mobility and traveling in the mountains is an opportunity to hear the sound of the glaciers that are punctuating the landscape, something that we rarely like hear of. The mountains are rich in food resources, and this is where the villagers are grazing their livestock and collect edible plants and dry dung, fuel and branches for their fires. And accessing these resources entail going high up in the mountain, which brings people closer to glaciers that are found at the upper part of valleys, which are otherwise not always visible from villages. So through their movements in the mountains, herders sometimes come into close contact with glaciers. And some of the accounts that I collect are emphasizing this sonorous aspect. And this is the case of a glacier named Chilchil in the village of Nye in the Sham area of Ladakh. And the name Chilchil is an onomatopoeic name that evokes the loud rumbling sound of the glacier that resides in the valley. Many people in Nye have had a wee inspiring encounters with the Chilchil glaciers and have been charmed by its beauty. But for some, the glacier also inspired feelings of fear. As a young boy, Tashi Tundup went to search for his horse in the mountains. He tracked the animal by following its trail of dung, and this eventually led him to the majestic gorge that leads to the glacier. The gorge was full of snow, and it's only when he returned to the village that he learned that this place is avoided by the villagers as, and I'm quoting, people die as they get terrified, as he explained. Tashi Tundup was both terrified and impressed by the stunning scene of the grumbling sound emitted by the glacier. Sering Doma, a woman in her 70s, spent years grazing her livestock in the mountains. One day she reached what she describes as the vein of Chilchil Glacier. So leading to the glacier was a very steep gorge, and from there, one could always hear a loud, steadily echoing bong bong, as she described. Tsering Doma suggested that this could have been created by the water inside the glacier. About 2 decades ago, some herders started to share unbelievable news about Chilchil. Tsering Doma went to see for herself. The glacier had receded considerably and had become, this is her, had become silent. Many in Nye saw in this a failure to pray the local deities, a consequence of people's increasing self-centeredness. If the deities are happy, then the glacier is good, explains the woman. Others emphasize winters that are now much warmer and bring less snowfall. Today, the name of the glacier, Chilchil, depicting the noise it once emitted, has become a remnant of a bygone era. In Nye, many herders who used to trek the mountains were particularly troubled to find how the glacier had become mute with its recession. According to Ladakhi, an unhealthy glacier can be seen as a bad omen, and as it either indicates that the fortune of a community will be affected, or it constitutes a symptom of morally wrong behavior and a broken reciprocity. And in Nye, when villagers came to appreciate the extent of the recession of Chilchil, they knew their glacier needed to be attended to, and thus turned towards the monastic community for the performance of prayers and ritual. And here, receding glaciers are not just debris that represent signs of a changing planet. Glaciers are vital entities that need to be taken care of, in this case, through a ritual. So this is evocative of a sense of responsibility that emerges from an intimate knowledge about glacier, one which develops through physical engagement, affect, and local ideas and practices. And the significance of this connection is perhaps best evoked in the words of a Ladakhi woman who explained to me that in order to care for a glacier, you have to know the glacier like you know a friend. Similarly, the village of Tahan in Zanskar, which is a sub-region of Ladakh, used to be bounded by a massive glacier, the glacier of the Himalaya mountain, the terminus of which used to be a few meters from Sonam Paldan's house, this man. And from his land, the man could hear the glacier's cracking sound, which were always louder in summer because of the seasonal melt of the glacier. Like, it's not like recession per se, but glacier will always melt a bit in summer to provide water. And then, sorry, extremely feared by villagers, the most dramatic of these sounds would be that of avalanches. In the 1980s, one such avalanche destroyed the lower part of nearby Shagar village. Avalanches were more common in the past because there was more snow, and today they are a rare occurrence. The glacier has receded tremendously since Sonam Paldan's youth. It has also become silent. The man, who's 80 years old, finds the glacier's stillness unsettling. It is as if the glacier has become old like me, he said. In the past, people would pray to Omasilamo, a local deity, so that the winter would bring enough snow for the glacier to be healthy. But today, and I'm quoting him, people don't do this as they don't have the time and they are not really interested, as he lamented. His reflection echoed those of many of his generation who feel that the increasing interest for material gain is detrimental to a sacred geography. So for Sonam Paldan and Sering Dolma, the state of glacier is closely connected to people's behavior and to the local development. But here, glaciers are communicating their troubled state through their growing silence. For these two interlocutors, this calls for a response, namely the acknowledgement of the local deities. So the intimacies that many Ladakhi have developed with glaciers through the years of observation and engagement is predicated on seeing glaciers as more than object. So in conclusion, to make sense of the effective feeling that with which glacier recession is enmeshed, we need to consider how in the Himalayas, glaciers are neither just this distant mass in the landscape, nor only the subject of scientific rationalization, but also closely connected to communities. And this connection is multifaceted, bringing in deities and linking glaciers to human community through principle of reciprocity. Oops, sorry, I went too far. The stories of encounter with glacier are presented, locate an ethic of care in a place where people are affected by the consequences of climate change. Here, ice is not just abstracted from a place and an object of scrutiny as it is dying. For Ladakhi, receding ice cannot be dissociated from an ethic of responsibility for these changes, something which is closely linked to an ethic of care. And ultimately, these stories also draw attention to how differently situated communities are living with climate change and to the importance of cultivating an imagination of proximity to ice for the flourishing of an ethic of care. That's it, thank you.
So should I switch this off?
Yeah, and then I'll introduce Keiko, and then if you can come and we can switch the presentation. So I want to introduce you to Keiko. Keiko Yoshioka is she's from the Department of Cells and Systems Biology from the University of Toronto, and she's a plant molecular biologist and much more. And her work focuses on. You don't hear? No.
No.
Oh, okay. Her work focuses on how plants sense the world. I really like this idea of sensing because it's not just like feeling or like it's neither physical nor something else, right? And more specifically, she looks at how molecular mechanism of plants, like how plants defend themselves through various molecular mechanisms. That is how plants defend themselves against various stresses, including pathogens, and how they go through complex communication with other plants and organisms. And I think that your work is somehow in between this panel and the panel that we're going to have on April 15th, which is going to be about symbiosis. So it's really fitting that you're presenting your work here, and you're also mentioning symbiosis. So, Keiko.
I'm gonna put this on.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Everybody in? Okay. Thank you very much for introduction, and then also I'm very grateful to be here to have this very rare opportunity for me, because usually I'm talking about my research result in front of this molecular biologist. So I hope today.
They said they can't hear very well.
Okay. I don't know if it's actually. I move it. Can you hear? No, it's not.
It's because it's in the room. It's not on Zoom. Everything is fine.
Okay. So should I use your microphone that you had?
I don't know. Could you hear before better with this microphone? Can you hear better with this one? There is no difference. No, it is on for the audience at home.
The guy is coming. our guy.
Excuse us while we fix the audio.
So you guys want to be able to hear it all the way in the back?
Yeah.
Okay.
There.
You need to then stand over there.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Because of the feedback that will happen.
Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? But I think. Oh yeah. Now yeah. Now it's good. So I cannot be here. Little bit here. Okay. Okay. I hope. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Sorry about it. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very grateful to be here. I'm a professor in cell and systems biology. Very unusual name of the department. Basically, we are molecular biologists and then very mechanistic and then working a lot of things. But when Roberto contacted me, I thought it's very interesting to try to have some kind of connection or conversation with the non-scientist, like anthropologist or social scientist, or the people who are working on, especially she mentioned about care. So I have to confess, I didn't know what is ethics of the care. I've never heard the term. So I just pick up this care, and that's very interesting because she said non-human beings care. And I started to talk to her that the plant actually care themselves and also be taken care by the organisms. So today I just want to quickly explain that, and also I want to introduce my work very briefly. So the first of all, here I just said self, non-self, and then myself. And then basically when I kind of started to be interested in biology, before that, as when I was teenage, I was very curious this self and the non-self and how we can actually define myself and the others, and what is this boundary. And I felt it sounds very philosophical, but maybe just the teenage things that the teenage has that kind of question continuously. But that stuck on myself, and I started to think about why we have to recognize this or differentiate the self and the non-self. And biologically speaking, it's very, very fundamental ability for all living organisms, because without that, we cannot take care of ourselves. We have to, I mean, we doesn't mean human, I mean living organism, have to sometimes defend ourselves against potential enemy. So which actually immunity. So that is I'm very much interested in, and I'm working on plant immune system in this department. And then, so I feel that is also some kind of self-care. They recognize all of the living organisms, recognize ourselves and then non-self. And if it's an enemy, we have to activate our immune system to defend ourselves. So that is my actually very fundamental interest as a biologist. And then maybe you already realize that this thick Japanese accent, this is Japanese accent. I'm a Japanese native. And then just because also when I visited the Beyond the Humans, the exhibition, and I also started to understand that people are very much interested in this cultural background to understand the nature. So I just put a few slides about like my cultural background, which is actually the Japanese, the sense of nature. And you might have known this animator called Hayao Miyazaki. I'm a scientist. I'm not a sociologist or anthropologist. I have no academic training to mention about it. But as one Japanese, I feel this Hayao Miyazaki's cartoon or the animation pretty much depicted the Japanese sense of nature, and we deeply respect, and also in a way we also fear that there is a very strong fear against the existence of natural being. And I highly recommend this Nausicaa of the Ballet of the Wind. I felt that's just a fantastic piece that you can also see some kind of Japanese sense of the nature. And also, I just one thing I wanted to introduce is that stuck. It does work. Our IT guy, can he come? This or this or is there a way to move? Right.
Trying to play the video?
No, it's just the next slide. This one? This one?
Alt tab.
Okay. Okay, okay, so I will go. It's stuck.
Should be good. You don't need to, so try moving your slides.
Yes, I'm pushing. Or okay, okay. So I just want to show you this picture that it's quite interesting for me. That it's what happened is that this is the station, and you can see the tree stick out. So what happened is that when they built the station, they realized that there is a 700 years old tree, and then obviously they had to cut down to build the station, but local residents protest to this the plan. And then, as a matter of fact, that's still understandable. But the train company actually themselves very much hesitated to cut this tree. And then finally, they spent a huge effort to actually salvage this tree and then basically create this kind of a structure that built the station surrounding the tree. And then basically, everybody was very happy about the outcome, and we are very impressed about this the company. And this is, I felt that this is very much also depict our sense of nature. And then another thing is that Roberta also was a bit surprised that I think in the perspection of the scientist is a kind of very cold-blooded white coat laboratory coat people. And then as a matter of fact, so this picture showing that annual memorial service for experimental animals in Japan. So this is not just so basically it's nothing there. This is just a memorial stone, but there's no ashes or anything related to a body. But basically once per year, the people gather and then show appreciation to the animal they use for the experiment. And then this practice is basically, it's very common. Almost all the institution like a university or even private company does this kind of things to show, and they ask us to join to show appreciation. So I grew up in this kind of a background, and then I became a scientist. And then of course there is a lot of the cultural influence, but I just want to also, having said that, I just want to talk about my work in my laboratory. So here, I'm working on this signal transduction and network in plant immunity stress responses. It's a bit complicated, but basically what I'm doing is that how plants sense environment, and then they have to, based on this sensing, so for example, either became hot, cold, or they need more water, or there is some kind of a disease-caused microorganism is there, once they sense, they have to have an output. Output will be either they will conserve water consumption in the body or they activate immunity. They have to have this output. Exactly same, conceptually same as animal, but they do quite a different way. So I'm actually working on this picture showing that how clearly plant is sensing temperature. So this signal is activated when they sense the cold water. I will show you the video later. But anyway, so that is my work. And here I just have some sensing video. I hope it will work. Left side, what you are about to see is that this has a picture of the plant. And then the researcher cut this area and add the amino acid glutamate, which is also signaling molecule for us in the brain, but also in the plant is a signaling molecule. And so once they do, what an amazing picture, right? So it's also, you can see it's only 200 seconds. Actually, this is almost a live picture. And then this researcher, Dr. Toyota, he's my collaborator, and this is his work. But what you are looking at is that basically, if you cut the plant or touch or do something, as a matter of fact, they sense immediately that. And then sending a signal to whole body and then prepare for the next step. So in this case, wounding is frequently associated with insect attack. Insect chew the plant, and then they have to know it. It's actually something, maybe there is a massive insect attack, and then they will send a signal to whole body. If this is a tree, they will send the whole body the signal, and then will prepare, like a gene expression, all those things will change it. And then, so that is very interesting. This picture also amazing picture. I love, and I frequently show that in a student, to the student, they really love it. And then this left side, I just hope that it will work. What you are about to see is that this is a whole one leaf. And then again, this actually sensing a cold temperature. So it's lighted up. So this lighted up thing is something we actually put some sensor to visualize it. But basically what happened is that in these two areas, had a light up once and go back and light up again. Twice they actually go. So as a matter of fact, depend on the stimulation, it will actually even oscillate to have some kind of the information signal. So that is some actually the clear evidence that plant in your house or something like that, quietly sitting, but they are actually sensing a lot about their world. And then, so they also, just now I said the wounding and then the temperature, but they also can sense the microorganism. So this is just a picture that it's not working. This is not working. This is not working. Just not. I have this. Okay. So this is the picture that plant got this disease and then dying by bacteria-caused disease. And then this whole environment, we have a lot of microorganisms like fungi, bacteria, and virus. We just cannot see it, but they're everywhere. And some of them can cause disease to us and also the animal, the plant. And then, but the plant can sense those microorganisms, and then once they realize that microorganism actually attacking them, they will activate immune system. And this is something, a very natural thing that almost all living organism has to do, that we have to, even we consciously don't know if COVID, the virus infected us or not. By our consciousness, we cannot see or we cannot sense, but our body knows it once they enter. So our body immediately activate immune system and then they try to fight. And that's, the plant does the same thing. And basically, so when I said it's basically plant can recognize almost all the environmental factor, like and also they can communicate with many living organisms to be able to survive. So this is a fundamental the ability of the plant, because they cannot move, they cannot do by themselves something. So they try to communicate with other living organisms to survive. So plant can communicate with other plant by chemicals. They can release some chemical, volatile chemical, and they can actually communicate those. And another thing is that the plant also can communicate insect. And this is also, they usually use the chemical, like a volatile chemical, and they manipulate manipulate insect to help them in a way. And then also, like I said, plant can communicate even with microorganisms. That I just want to show you some slide today, a bit later. So, like I said, the plant can communicate because their relationship with microorganism, especially, there are three different types of outcome. Some microorganisms cause disease, so it's a pathogenic microorganism. Another thing is neutral, because like I said, there are tons of virus and then bacteria in this whole world, but many of those, as a matter of fact, majority of them don't cause any the harm to the living organism because of the immune system. And then last one is a symbiotic. And then, as a matter of fact, I felt this symbiotic next to this event. I will definitely join to listen what is happening. But this is a very interesting thing. And then, for example, the fungi, it can cause devastating disease. Like this one is a picture, it's Dutch elm disease. You might have heard that this is a very social issue, that it's elm is dying by this disease. And once they got this disease, you have to really cut down. There is nothing we can do frequently. But at the same time, same group of, not same fungi, but it's a fungi, there is a symbiotic fungi, it's mycorrhiza. So mycorrhiza basically can create a symbiotic relationship with plant through the root, and then they can help the plant, especially to get like a water or some mineral from soil. And they do a lot of things. And there is some kind of also observation that some tree could utilize this mycorrhiza to communicate with other tree. I'm not completely sure that scientifically it's proven or not. But some researcher is commenting that kind of thing. So the outcome could be pathogenic, like this devastating situation. But if plant can cause this, create this symbiotic interaction, it will be very beneficial for the plant. So in our, basically, like I said, so the beneficial interaction exists, and they can do either promote like the water uptake or mineral uptake. And then more importantly, my specific interest is this enhancement of the immunity. So if plant can cause a symbiotic interaction or relationship with a specific bacteria in the root area, we call it a rhizosphere. Rhizosphere is a specific area of the root surface, and then that root surface has a lot of microorganisms living. And then in a way, you can think that plant itself allow them to come and then make that symbiotic relationship in the surface of the root, and then getting a benefit in a way. So because they can promote immunity or some sort of growth, and then in turn, so you may feel that why bacteria living on the surface of the root, and basically a plant can provide energy and also shelter. And basically, you can think that the plant is or green, the living organism is the only existence that can generate energy using sunlight. Solar light is solar. The energy is the only energy that we can create many things actually. And without the plant, we cannot survive. Animal cannot survive. It's many of the organisms on the earth, most likely that depend on the plant. And basically the bacteria also living there and getting the energy source, which is carbohydrate that's created by plant. And then they have a mutual benefit. So win-win situation in both sides. So the microorganism take care of plant and the plant take care of them. And that is their relationship. So this is a picture from our laboratory, and the very interestingly, what we did is that here, this is a plate and have a plant, and here we put some kind of bacteria. And this is control, meaning there is no bacteria. So the plant, this is a plant growing happily on this plate. This one, I said pathogenic, meaning that here we put the pathogenic bacteria. So what's happening is that you can maybe tell that the root completely became shorter. The root going on this side, we call it a lateral root. So that growth also completely suppressed. And another fascinating thing is that they even not touching it, right? So before touching the bacteria, they sense it, and there is some kind of pathogenic organism. So they stop growing or going that toward. And as a matter of fact, this is other bacteria we found that this is a beneficial bacteria. You can tell they don't care though. It's completely same as a control, or actually even better. They grow better and they're also touching to the bacteria. But because the plant knows that they are not pathogenic, they are actually the good guy in a way. So that's quite interesting to think. And then also what we know is that plant actually can cry for help. So when they get the disease or something, they also change the secretion of the molecule from the root and try to mobilize the bacteria or microorganism from the soil to create some beneficial microorganism group. We call this is microbiome. Maybe you have heard that microbiome in the gut microbiome. I think I may have a picture. Okay, so the plant, maybe you have heard that or probiotic or something recently that you can purchase in health shop. That is actually beneficial bacteria that you can uptake to make better microorganism or bacteria the community in your guts. And basically, it's exactly same concept that the plant root surface, this rhizosphere area, is the almost this animal, the microbiome. That is, they try to have a better microbiome there and then try to get some help from them. So it's very fascinating, and I'm very much interested in so because of that, in our laboratory, what we are doing right now is that to look for some beneficial bacteria that can help plant. Basically, I had a collaboration with researcher who collecting a lot of bacteria and then try to find some bacteria that can help like that. And then those kind of things could be used for some kind of alternative of the synthetic the pesticide or fungicide to basically you can imagine that agrochemical is potentially harmful in the environment. So if you can utilize those kind of natural the bacteria to help plant immunity or growth. That will be very amazing. And also this is one that bacteria we found that maybe you can tell immediately that if we put this bacteria, the root growth will be enhanced. And then this will definitely help plant growth. And then in one example is like if you have a flooding, water flooding, the plant can actually anchor to the soil much stronger by this kind of strong root. And then basically you can rescue the plant from this flooding situation or something. I was very interested about this climate change also because the flood will happen more often, that we know that after this climate change. So people really looking at this kind of a solution that if we can actually stop some loss of the vegetation. So this will be last my slide, that basically what we are doing is that in a molecular level, how the plant and beneficial microorganisms interact. This is an electron microscope picture showing that this root area and this small thing that is bacteria, and they are growing on the root. And you can see the incredible number of bacteria is there, but this beneficial bacteria will not cause disease at all. It's plant just to be very healthy. And we also want to know how the plant will figure it out if it's an enemy or the friend. That is not completely clear in a molecular level or the mechanistic level. And then also we want to actually know how they can affect on the plant growth. And then that's all. I'm sorry, but it was very long. So that's all. And thank you very much for your attention.
I'm just going to, like, we don't need the mic anymore because I'm going to introduce Grace. Oh, yeah, we have the help now. So should I ask her to? Yeah, so Grace, if you can start sharing, I'm going to introduce you first. So Grace Grothaus, she's joining us from home. You can see her on the screen now. Hi, Grace. So she is a computational media artist whose research questions center around ecosystemic human and plant relationships in relation to the present global climate change crisis, and she's also dealing with speculative futures. Her research creation is expressed as physical computing installations which take place both outdoors and in the gallery. And I invite you to go and see the exhibition because the non-human has one of her installations. She's also been exhibited in many places in North America and abroad, like in Paris, in Rio de Janeiro, in London, in South Africa, and in Barcelona, in Spain. And she's doing her PhD in digital media at York University. So here she is.
Hi, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you. And I'm so excited by your talks, Karine and Keiko. So without further ado, I'll speak a little bit more about my practice. This presentation provides a synopsis of the research questions that I'm working through right now, which are primarily centered around how to foster empathetic connections between one another and our more than human environs. These all questions stem out of interest in the global climate crisis and speculative futures, how we might sort of bend the curve, and not only bend the curve, but change our relationship to one another so that we can have a more equitable future. My emphasis is on care-embedded materiality and the sensing and visualization of invisible environmental phenomena. I engage in theoretical and material investigations and experiments. These are expressed through various media, but primarily take place through physical computing installations, indoors and outdoors. My practice is collaborative, involving visual and performing artists, scientists, engineers, musicians, volunteers, and members of the public in the production of the projects. This collaboration is a means for me of moving beyond the self and decentering. And in a way, this, I think, mirrors the ecosystemic relationships that I study in the creation of my work. I thought it would be nice to include a slide of some of the things that I read frequently, as this is formative of the theoretical underpinning that the work emerges from. So lately I've been reading a lot of Donna Haraway, Suzanne Simard, Peter Wohlleben, Merlin Sheldrake, Timothy Morton, and Robin Wall Kimmerer. But of particular note is a book that I highly recommend, Breathe, Investigations into Our Atmospherically Entangled Future. And this is an interdisciplinary compilation of essays by Klaus Lowenhart, which features writers from many different disciplines and is all focused around climate and atmosphere as an invisible planetary connection. And over this brief presentation, I'll highlight just 3 past and current projects in which care embedded materiality in the world and the practices of sustainability, speculation, and hopeful inclusionary practices are, I believe, central to the development of the work. The first project I'd like to share with you is Sun Eaters, a series of solar-powered bioelectric sensing modules that I've designed to show the electrical activity inside a plant via light level. I'm interested in seeing if artworks can act as an empirical interface for grasping our complex, interwoven, beyond human ecologies of present-day Earth and our ways of thinking about them. I'm curious if they can expand our imagination. So what you're looking at here is the millivolts of electricity that are generated by the tree, translated to light as that shifts up and down in voltage. This is installed in Southern California at the Cal IT2, California Institute of Technology, as part of an art and science festival. For a lot of the same reasons that stop signs and warning notices may be outfitted with blinking LEDs in the city, that's why I've chosen to translate the bioelectric activity of the trees to light. It's a means of arresting your attention within our oversaturated world and overcoming plant blindness. And by putting these modules on multiple trees, my hope is to help people see the differences between the trees and see them as individuals instead of just plants, because each one is unique and different. With early installations of this project, I measured only the electrical activity in the plants, but more recent installations are also combining measurements of viewers' heartbeats with that of the bioelectric shifts in the plants. And this, I think, adds to the sense of wonder and creates an opportunity for a meeting across species. This continues to be exhibited and evolve, most recently at Isaiah, and also here in Toronto at Sensoria, the Art and Science of Our Senses, which took place during the Nuit Blanche evening last fall up at York University. And the second project I'd like to share with you is Against Our Better Nature. This is an ongoing umbrella project centered around actions which aim to record vanishing plant biodiversity. It's incredible how much species biodiversity we are losing right now. We are in the midst of the 6th great extinction, and some estimates project that the general animal population around the world has fallen by about 68%. In some biodiversity hotspots, that number can rise to 94%. But there's not even statistical estimations for plants because there has been far less research and focus on plants than animals. Some plant species are going extinct that we never even knew existed. They were never scientifically described. So I've chosen for this umbrella project to focus on plant life. And so when I do field research, I collect seeds in forests and savannas, take records of what I find, and photograph them. And through these photographs, I can make 3D digital records that are identical, sort of digital twins to the original. That enables me to leave the seeds in their natural habitat, making specimen study possible without ecosystemic harm, which is a form of care that I embed in the process of the production of this series of work. Here are a few images from those field studies of different seeds and sketches and models that I made from them, and some photographs in the field in various places. And this work has given me the opportunity to collaborate with seed banks in a number of different locations to create 3D models and records of the seeds that they have in their archive. These images here are from the Inyochim Botanical Research Center, and they are home to the largest collection of palm species in their seed bank of any seed bank in the world, which is quite notable, and have been quite generous in collaborating with me and able to take a look at some of the things that they have there and share models with them back and forth. These are images from the Jardin Botanique in Paris. There's a seed bank there where they are also doing emergency recording of the hotspot of the Mediterranean basin, trying to record species before they're lost to climate change. And some of more images from their archives there of their seed catalog and storage. And out of that, I've created a series of artworks that try to indicate what it is that we're losing. So I take these 3D models that are the digital twins and then kind of render them out so that you can see the wireframes from which the models are created and see them vanishing in space. So these images are from an exhibition at International des Arts. In addition to the print work, this also takes place as sculpture, electronics. So on the left, you'll see Zeharia tuberculosa, which is it's a threatened species. There are very few of these trees left. And these are really enormous seeds, and I found it really artistically interesting as well because it looks a bit like a clock or a stopwatch. And so I put electronics inside so that a tilt switch would activate and play an audio recording when you held it up in the gallery. And the culmination of this series of work is a community archive, a citizen science database that can be contributed to called openseed.space. And here there are instructional videos for how to do photogrammetry, an invitation for citizen scientists potentially to do their own recording of the biodiversity that they find wherever they might be, and then to record their climate stories. So this is a call to action to make a record of these things before they're lost, and and to make that repository open and available to everyone. This will be published soon in the Culture Squared, which is a journal of different experiments in creative biology, community science, and an attempt to record ancestral knowledge. And these projects, I think, led into the work that you can see in the More Than Human exhibition, of which this talk is a part of. I, for this exhibition, was commissioned by curator Jane Tingley to create an artwork that I titled Dawning. It's a single channel video on custom projection screen with projector, speakers, and microphone. And I see this as an audiovisual celebratory meditation on the daily circadian rhythm of organisms as they respond to their environment, and an invitation to gallery visitors to join in. I think about dawn as being this incredible moment when, regardless of the species, there is a call and response to the daily rhythm. You could say that they respond to each new day in a beautiful and endless wave as the sun swoops over the earth. There's always dawn somewhere, and there's this sort of this ranging chorus from place to place, from forest to field. And the electronics in this piece are supported through Jane Tingley's umbrella project, Foresta Inclusive. And these are a series of IoT, or Internet of Things enabled sensing hubs that are installed on trees in different locations and Wi-Fi enabled. And so they have a suite of sensors that can measure things like light level and moisture, wind, etc., and then transmit this to a website called shifter.io. And there you can subscribe to that sensor data using an MQTT protocol, which I've done in order to live shift this pre-recorded video in the forest. So the real-time weather conditions outside, the wind, the light level, the CO2 level, these shift the visual perception, the brightness and the black point and the red channel of video in the installation Dawning. This is another shot of the software Touch Designer that makes it possible to do this, and some still images from the video itself. I see it as a way to invite gallery visitors to the forest. Perhaps if you're in the downtown core, you don't have access to green space, but I can bring it to you through this immersive video, even if just for a moment. The filming of Dawning took place over a period of a few weeks this past summer. Each day I would wake up before dawn and begin to record with my camera and multi-channel audio field recorder. And so I'll share a few more still images with you. This was one of my favorites that I felt very grateful to capture. It's a ring-tailed lemur in the wild. And ultimately, out of all the hours of footage that I took, I chose to focus on the more dreamlike sequences that came out of just play and exploration in the process of filming. And the reason for that is that my intention is to convey this sort of warm feelings to you of a sunny afternoon, of basking in the sun, that I would like to share with people in this cold and dreary winter as they visit on-site gallery. I hope that you're able to make a trip there and see all the wonderful artworks that are included in the exhibition. So the end resulting video is fairly abstract as a result. I moved away from the more concrete forms and leaned into the atmospherics in my editing of the video. Perhaps one of the more interesting live video shifts is the red channel shift. You'll see the video will go almost completely red at times. And that's meant to mimic the warm red color that you see when you close your eyes and look up at the sun. And my hope is that as you're invited to recline under the video screen and immerse yourself in this experience, that you can get sort of a sense of what it might be like to be there, and an invitation to, at the next time that you have available, go to the forest and do some forest bathing yourself. Another big part of the artwork is the reflections in the screen that are created through apertures cut into the projection film itself. And this is a pattern that I created by tracing over some of the still images from the video, and using Rhino, I could 3D model that and cut them into the projection screen, enabling the pass-through that created the dappled light reflection. And there is a microphone provided as well, so that people can join in on the dawn chorus themselves. So with the finished work, my hope is that this provides a means of reconnecting to and seeing ourselves within a microcosm of our deeply interconnected collective global biosphere. Thank you very much.
Great to stay here because now we have a discussion. So I think I'm gonna turn the light on. Yeah, okay. And I want to invite our presenters here, and we can start a little bit of a conversation.
Rachel, would you like me to stop sharing?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Now you're double, you're in two screens, like you're very big.
Oh no, I wish that I could be there
Nice.
with you guys right now. I'm sorry that I cannot.
Can you see
home
us? Hi. So, well, but like we can see you very well, so that's actually nice. That's better than I thought. So like I had prepared a few questions and actually share with with you already, but I want to share it with the public because having the privilege of having seen the presentations beforehand, I could actually reflect a little bit more on the issues. And like there were I had lots of questions, but like there's two questions in particular that I'm very interested in. And so what does it mean to develop an ethics of inclusion and care that sees humans and non-humans as equal? And then like more questions in depth, which I posed to our speakers beforehand. So the idea is that we often interpret different words through our cultural and personal experiences, as we have also seen through the presentations, as well as through our professional lives. How do we experience such relations, and what responsibilities do we have towards the organisms and the individuals or the communities that we study? And what kind of mutual relations and coexistence do we observe in the world we study? And well, I'm gonna throw the last one, which is how has our intellectual and cultural knowledge informed our approach to care? I know that we all have different backgrounds, so how has it informed our approach to care, and how has our practice and research revealed different meanings of care? So these are all questions that I felt like asking. Maybe we should start from the beginning. So how do we experience the relations with our subjects or with our what we study, basically? And here is the, I'm gonna start this out, or I can pass it around. We have two of them. Yeah. Who wants to start?
Yeah, thank you for the, can you hear me? Is that?
I'm gonna turn it on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the question, Roberta. Yeah, as an anthropologist, for me, these questions are very difficult because it's like, I'm learning from the people that I work with. I'm spending time with them there. I'm trying to translate as like their voice and what they are sharing as best as I can. And it's like, it's difficult because it's like to answer, like, if I think of an ethic of care, they have their own ethic of care. I have my ideas about care, and it's over time, it's like once, like it's I get really influenced by people's idea. But I find like the challenge is there are different ethics of care, and the one that the people I work with is really sort of attached to their localities, their lifestyle, the way that they are doing things, the resources that they have, and the sort of the kind of life they have. And then I find it a real challenge when I come back here and then like in the rhythm of the everyday life and all the constraints that we have, you want to keep certain things, but then it becomes very, very challenging. So it's always like difficult to maintain that balance. But if I think of an ethic of care in terms of relationship and how I relate to the people I work with, the idea is really to translate as best as I can how they are understanding the many changes that their environment is going through. And I find it very difficult because as an anthropologist in my work, it brings me in conversation with people studying glaciers from a different perspective than anthropology. And often the ideas that people have in the Indian Himalaya about why glaciers are receding, even if it's not like the ideas that are more about reciprocity, relationship with others, but how they are explaining things, it really sometimes it's difficult for this idea to be received by these ideas about the Himalayas that are really general, global, and then they don't go into the tiny details of like how climate change is experienced by the people living in the Himalayas. So yes, I hope I could answer some of the questions.
I think that was great. I want to read because Jane sent a message here, and she's kind of responding to you in some way. She says, this is less of a question and more of a comment. I really appreciated your discussion about the role of embodiment in the act of care and the necessity of a full body involvement, as well the way you talked about the liveliness of the glacier as an entity with feelings and more than a form is really meaningful for me. I agree that we must develop and hone our understanding of the natural world as a living and thinking entity. This really connects with some of the ideas informing the exhibition more than human. So I think it's very much connected to what you just said. But I wanted to hear from Keiko. I don't know if you want to say something.
I don't know if I actually completely understand the meaning, because you said it's equality between human and the other living organism. Is that what, right? I think it's very interesting because I kind of realize that I didn't know it because I'm always in my own research field and thinking, but this time I realize that people think that we treat our sample like a kind of just object. People may actually have the perception that to scientists or biologists that are wearing that white laboratory coat and cutting killing the living organism. But as a matter of fact, at least I believe that biologists completely understand what they are doing. And then as a matter of fact, biologists are the one that they believe we are completely equal. I and that mouse, or I and a plant, because people think that we can cut the plant, but it's not. When you cut beautiful flower, you are basically killing them, right? And that's I always feel I mean, a bit strange, but when I have to cut my beautiful plant, we grow several the months, and I have to utilize for experiment. I always feel when I cut it, I kind of apologizing. I'm sorry that I am going to use it. I don't say that to public because graduate student is there and they may feel I'm crazy. But basically I completely believe that biologists are the one who knows that we are the completely equal, because once we lose our life, it never can get it back. That we actually know very well every day. So I don't know, maybe I'm talking very pointless things, but that is what
I'm gonna take this one.
I find it very interesting that you say, oh, when I cut the plant in front of my students, I do not vocalize my regret, and because I think that my students are gonna think that I'm crazy. But I think that this speaks a lot to the kind of assumptions that people have about science, that you have to take like this kind of detachment from whatever you're doing because it's science, right? And so like we also fall for it, and we're like, oh no, we can't do something different because people are gonna think bad about us, right?
That's quite interesting. So there is my friend here that she's also anthropologist. Recently, we had some chat about this scientist's attitude that look like cold-blooded and then very blunt. And I think it's basically that is a training that we have to be very objective to the mechanism. So try not to actually activate our emotional part and try to suppress it. Otherwise, sometimes we kind of make mistake that maybe we see something, not something emotion may actually change our view. So we are trained to be like that, but as a matter of fact, I think it's including the graduate student, I think everybody, the biologist knows that this is very precious life, and then we are taking it when we do an experiment. So that is, I just wanted to show that the Japanese, the anniversary, annual, the ceremony.
Can I add something? It makes me think, Heiko, the picture that you were showing in the beginning with this train station, if I'm correct, and then the tree. Right. So in the Indian Himalaya, at the moment, there's a lot of like road building because for like future mineral exploitation, and then you will have these stupa, which are these Buddhist sort of shrine. But the thing is that if you move these stupa, then you're gonna like, the belief is that it's going to generate a lot of natural disaster, and then you're going to have like, it can be like locusts coming, it can be flood, it can be many things. And it's interesting to see how many like road projects are stopped because the local villagers, they don't want these like stupa to be moved, and they're really afraid. But it's also interesting to see like the sort of intersection of the sort of like two like rationality, because you will have the contractor and the engineers who are there, but the work must go on, like it should proceed. But interestingly, like I saw so many like sites where the work stopped and then nothing could go on because it's this idea that you're kind of like in another place, in another environment, and then you should respect this, and then until the people like find an agreement, and then you will see sometimes the road like has this huge like deviation because the stupa is there, and then there's another trajectory, and then yeah, it's like a bit the same idea.
It's very interesting. I also wanted to ask Grace about these questions, if she gave any thought about it. I'm sure she has.
For me, when I'm working with living organisms in my artwork, it's the ethics of care forefront in my mind, right? Like, how can I work with these living beings without causing them any harm, right? So with sun eaters, how can I attach them to the tree in such a way that there's no damage to the trunk, and that when the artwork's removed, there's no change to the plant at all, right? Negative effects from the electrodes, etc. With Against Our Better Nature, again, the photogrammetry creates the possibility for studying the seeds, recording the stories, recording the biodiversity without taking anything from these preserved lands. And with dawning, there's no living being that is brought into the gallery. But with all the artworks, and including dawning, I think there's an ethics of care towards the living beings that are interacting with the art, right? So how can I create an experience that's hopefully one that adds to a sense of joy, to a sense of awe, or happy associations for the people who choose to interact with the artwork, and hopefully leave them day brighter than it was before. So, yeah.
Thank you. I actually have other questions, but like I don't want to take too much space, because I know that maybe the audience has questions. But I had one more question that kind of came to my mind when I was listening to you, and it's so like you presented different practices of care, in the sense that, so we've seen the human side. Or mostly human, I guess. But we've also seen how plants defend themselves, and when they defend themselves, they actually come into communication with other organisms, and there's a back and forth that is happening, which I find absolutely fascinating, and I actually appreciated very much your images. And I think that Grace, in her field work, must have seen a lot of interactions when she was in the jungle, and she was like working and taking pictures and taking footage of it. So I'm wondering, like, have you become aware of different practices of quote unquote care, and like, how has this changed the way you understand it? How did you learn from it? Anybody? Maybe a different question, a difficult question.
Yeah, if I can, like, yeah, for me, definitely, like, this aspect of how people, elders, especially in the Indian Himalaya, will say, like, younger generation don't care the way we used to in the past about glacier, because you don't see them. Because in this part of the world, like, to see village glacier, you have to come in the valley. You don't see it from the village itself. So you really have to be in contact. And then how it's, I mean, before doing research there, I never sort of like really thought about like care as something that requires to be like physically like active in an environment. And then like more like I had more this idea of care like as something you learn like through like philosophy, ethics in book. But then the way that people articulate it, it's really about like being in constant contact with element of their surrounding environment. Yeah.
I hope I completely understand. You are Christian, so basically how I can learn from my savage.
No, I mean, it's more like what you learn from your plants, like right. when you were studying from them. Yeah, like what did you learn from them, and did you change the way you're dealing with them and you're treating them?
Interesting. Never thought about it.
Always a first time.
I should have thought about it, but one thing is I can tell is that it's just each time I get the result, I'm kind of surprised, kind of. So our discipline is like we kind of think and use past data, hypothesize some model, and then we'll test it. And then 90% is wrong. It's either we fail the experiment or wrong. And then basically what we initially thought is frequently wrong. And so each time we learn from nature, like so that's the life. And then so that is like the plant is the communication with bacteria. I show the picture. I was very surprised when the student showed me that result. I asked them that to repeat again to see that. And then it was like that. So I thought, wow, the plant even cannot touch it. It's basically that they can send some molecule from the bacteria, and then it's just like each time I learn a lot in a many way, and then also the relationship, the different organisms relationship, I'm learning constantly. Sorry, maybe I'm a bit off, but I don't know if I'm answering well. Yeah.
That's exactly what I wanted to know. That's very interesting. Also, you told me already, so like that's why I wanted the answer from you. Grace?
I think the thing that I learned that I think most is relevant to this conversation over the course of making all these works is that I started with sort of a Western perspective that to care for an ecosystem, to care for these natural spaces, so to speak, natural, that meant we should set them aside and stay out of them, right? But through my experiences, through listening and reading and being in Central and South America, I learned that the indigenous perspective that is, I think, more accurate is that the human should be a part of the ecosystem in order to care for it, because if done so in a sustainable and care-filled way, in the way that indigenous populations do, that all the species then thrive better together. So that it's a totally different worldview that I have now than when I started this work a few years ago.
Thank you. We have questions. We also have comments. So should I read the comments first, or should I get the questions from people? I don't know. Okay, Itamar, because you need the microphone though. Then I have to amplify for you because people at home are. I'll come with.
First of all, I have to thank you because care and fear present to me like language challenge, in the sense that the language is challenged, not only me. It shows the limitation of the language. And I'm wondering how care and fear and care are related. However, I'll go first to your talk about respect and fear. And I want to suggest replacing fear with awareness. And there is a very big difference. If I'm afraid of something, I'm already in a very vulnerable state. If I'm aware of the dangers, I can take some positive action. So the way we relate to, for example, the first speaker about the signature of sound or signature of nature via sound is very different if it is glacier or music pleasant sound versus earthquake sounds. So many ideas may be pointed through that, but I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you for this. Like it's really interesting, this idea of care, fear, and then sound. I think it resonates well with how people in Ladakh are like seeing glacier, because at the same time, it's like clearly when this sound is no longer there, it really instills fear because it signals that there's something which is really wrong happening, and something is like not going on so well. Definitely, yes.
Anybody wants to add?
Thank you so much for those presentations, and I'm sorry I arrived late. While I was listening to all of you, I kept being reminded by a description of science by Robin Wall Kimmerer, who says science has this ability to polish the gift of seeing. I love that definition, but at the same time, while she highlights the ways in which Western science has really foregrounded seeing and the visual, all of your interventions, and of course Robin Wall Kimmerer's own way of interacting, doing botanist work, highlights the need also to foreground the knowledge production of other senses, like even within the human, right? The sensing by sound, sensing by touching. There's of course the visual, and I see Grace, translating into visual signals via electricity, the relation to plants, and so. But the need and necessity to inscribe care or understand care as requiring a greater sense of, in fact, how all of the human senses are alive to the liveliness of whatever we interact with. And I see that also in your description of the relation to plants, even though you're working within sort of the how to make students see like how plants do it. At the same time, there is, I think that plants don't see, plants do other stuff that is actually just as important, and that there's a care happening there. So just more of a comment, I guess. Oh, I did have one question for Keiko about sort of that initial description of self, non-self of the plant, and the relation to immunity, the relation between sort of negotiating friend or enemy. I am wondering sort of whether the question of the self is also itself not necessarily stable, like in organisms. For example, when we have a disease, is our organism overreacts, right? They're immune, so, and it ends up sometimes overtaking the organism itself. And at times, the way self-care happens is also by way of deciding to sacrifice something, right? A part. So the question is for what you're seeing happening in plants, is there that same kind of sometimes effect of, or there's something that is, harm to me in whatever I'm sensing, putting here an eye in the plant, but I can deal with it. So, the cut might be enough then that can, organize a response on the edge. And then what happens when there's too much, or when there's, you mentioned the fact, that possibly like a cut can also potentially always mean a potential invasion, right? So where, and the reason I'm asking this question has to do sometimes with also the kinds of ways in which as humans also we tend to socially respond to, questions of immunity and these social moments that require like a big putting up of walls versus a kind of a more permeable relation to the environment.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting question. Is it working? Yeah, thank you very much. Very. Yeah. So if I so the one thing is maybe you may be interested in that it's a plant. It's a so we kind of care. We think this plant is in a way more close to human or animal because they are, we call it a multicellular organism. So basically the body is consists with so many different cells. And then as a matter of fact, each cell is actually living unit. So each cell actually has some kind of living will to survive. So that's quite interesting because when we think about the cancer cell, is also completely lost control and try to live by itself and become the kind of crazy cells and kill the host body. The plant's case, this interesting immune system is that some cells sacrifice themselves. So when one cell is invaded by pathogen, and as a matter of fact, this phenomena called hypersensitive response, and this attracted me a lot when I was a graduate student, and I started to work on plant immunity. But the fascinating thing is that the cell which was attacked by virus, like COVID kind of virus, this cell is already know that it's dying. And then what this cell will do is that this cell will send a signal to the surrounding still healthy cell that telling them that I'm already done, I'm infected, I'm done. You better to prepare. And but this preparation is amazing. This basically surrounding cell will going through the cell death. So basically they will start to commit to suicide to create this dead cell cluster. And by doing it, they can quarantine the virus in that dead cell cluster. And then to basically by sacrificing themselves to let the whole body survive. And it's conceptually very interesting. It's a bit like of course they don't have a brain, so they are not consciously doing. This is some kind of beautiful consequence of the evolution, but at the same time, I feel this, I'm very sure this each unit, the cell, has very strong will to survive. But yet they can sacrifice themselves to protect the whole body, then eventually they want whole body survive and set the seed and go next generation. That's actually quite interesting to think about it. So I'm wondering if that is answering to you.
Nina has a question. Yeah. So I'm giving you this because you and then Melinda.
Hello. I would like to ask, I am less familiar with the very high Himalayan altitudes, but I am a little familiar with alpine altitudes in Europe and in South America. And I'm really wondering whether it's granted that the Himalayan altitude is much higher, maybe, than even the highest in Europe. Nevertheless, I'm really interested whether there has been any comparative studies and from a social anthropological view of what the reactions are, what the attitude is and the approaches in the different cultural seras.
voice directly, but one thing I can, like, which is coming to my mind, also because we were talking about fear, and something which is like a recurring theme in the Himalayas, it's like Buddhist Himalaya, is that you cannot get close too much to any glacier or ice, because these ice bodies are inhabited by spirits and deities, and then they will like get very angry if you get too close. And I remember being at the pasture with like a woman at some point, and she was saying, see how cloudy it is today, it's like not good weather. She said, because there's a team of scientists, they went to the valley and they're closer to the glacier. She said it's always like that when they do this. And I have a colleague who's working in the Peruvian Andes, and he was like showing picture of an annual pilgrimage or ritual that people were doing there, where they go to the glacier and they extract a piece of ice from the glacier. And for me, I saw this and I was like, oh, this is so different, because like you would like never dare doing this in the Himalaya. You cannot get like too close to the ice. So there's different conceptions like this. But interestingly, like on a different level, I see more and more like collaboration between and knowledge exchange between communities of the Himalaya and how they are affected by climate change and some of the technologies that they are developing locally. And this is sort of like exchange with like researcher and people like in the Andes and like artificial glaciers that people are creating.
Scientists, it's the people I'm interested.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I have a specific question for Grace, and I guess I didn't understand. Like, are you making 3D models
Yes.
from the seeds, and so that they're like a visual representation?
Yes, which sometimes becomes a physical printed representation.
Okay, so I've been sitting here thinking about what that was sort of separate. The whole meaning of care and what that means with plants and animals and non-humans, and how it feels a little bit like we as humans overlay something based on our knowledge. And I actually live on native grassland, which is not protected in the, I'm interested. So I brought people in just to bless the land. And I'm interested in what happens on that land. Sometimes it's really violent, like the coyotes eat the deer kick the coyotes. Like there's other layers of survival. And I don't know how that fits with our human meaning of care. And I guess I was triggered by somebody saying that the difference between, I think it was Grace, that initially you thought you left it alone and now you go in. And I guess I'm struggling with that idea because we're going in with our perception of what care means. And I'm really aware that if I intervene, that's a very human position that I'm taking. And I guess, so I have this general question about how you define care for plants and animals.
That's a very broad, really excellent question. And thank you for your observations and attention and interest in that. I would say that it's complex, right? So we have seen Robin Wall-Kimmerer, for example, as another commenter brought up, has demonstrated that sweetgrass, for example, it grows more prolifically when picked by the indigenous people that traditionally use it for basket weaving than when it's left alone. And so that would be a case in point of humans participating as an active member of the ecosystem that helps it to proliferate. Now, this is really different than are Western ways of interacting with the land, with an ecosystem, in which we don't have that Indigenous knowledge, we don't have that understanding of how to care, what a sense of balance is, what the meaning of true sustainability really is. So those are the two poles, right? And there's just a lot in between. I don't know if that fully answers your question, but I hope that it begins to do that.
I'm wondering if any of you want to address the question. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe I can answer from what I know from the Indian Himalayas. I'm thinking it's always a fine balance between not like there is this idea that human care will help the environment flourish and then be healthy, but only to a certain extent. It's a balance between okay, but not taking too much. Elders in the Himalaya will always say you can take resources, but only as much as you need. It cannot be too much. And then I'm often asked, do Buddhists where you work eat meat? And I say, of course they do. What are they going to eat during the winter? There is barely anything besides what they can store and for how long it's going to last. And often themselves, people will say, oh, we eat a lot of meat in winter. But it's very little. They will eat a tiny thing, and then that's good for a day or for 2 days. They will say it's as long as it's just what we need, but no more than this. So I guess it's kind of from the perspective of the Indian Himalaya, it's like a bit, but not too much. In that you tempering with nature a bit, taming nature, but to a certain extent. Yes. Thanks.
In terms of that, I think biologists may have a quite different view. So the sustainable, the meaning of sustainable itself is very human-centric way that we want to sustain the status quo. But from a biologist view, that it's continuously changing. Everything is changing, and the not only human but other animal and even plant and bacteria, they will take the resources from nature. So from that view, we are very equal, and all of us are taking and consuming, extracting resources that we need to survive. But only one thing is very significantly outstanding the human is that this our brain is so good, and then created this technology and then tool to extract natural resources much more efficient than any other living organism. Other organism cannot store or cannot extract 10 times more than they need, and so we tend to extract more than we need, and we kind of store. And as a living organism, we also have to survive. This is our fate. That as a biologist, I feel that we were born to survive, and we want to use the brain and then any kind of the resources to survive. But at the same time, this human has a incredible good brain now, then we want to use it as not to overtaken from nature. The call sustainable is at least don't over harvest from the nature to have a moderate the change of the whole environment. So I think there is a natural always balance, and then it cannot be status quo. This is my view of the world, that it's always changing. But if it's dramatic change by human, the technology and overtaken, that will be very catastrophic, not only for other organisms, but human itself. So in that sense, we are very equal, and then we have to utilize our great brain to stop it, I think. So that is my thought.
So, and in some way, I mean, as a human person, as a human being, when you're going in and you're trying to do research, you're trying to understand some other living beings, and you're going in the field, there's no way you're gonna always affect the environment that you're in. Like, there's no way around, right? So, so I mean, in some way, it's good to ask the question, but then I don't know how much we can do in order to like just take a step back and not affect the environment, right? But yeah, so we have another question. I think it's gonna be the last one actually, because we are almost at time. Shane is there. He's like, it's time. Okay.
Okay, so when you talk about wounding, I was wondering, there is something called wound healing as a measure of the rate. The rate of wound healing is like an indication of how strong or weak the immunity system is. How is it in the context of your work when you talk about wounding? Yeah, plant wounding is also, if I injure my finger, cells are mobilized.
And then can heal.
Okay, so when you talked about the, what I call apoptosis of the cell, so before the cell commits apoptosis, you say that it signals to the environment, so the other stronger or non-attacked cells can attack back, okay? That was your message?
Yes,
I'm gonna give you this because they say that they can't hear you. So
Right. Thank you very much. So he's talking about this, the healthy cell will commit suicide to rescue the body. So that is so it's in the animal system, they call apoptosis, that phenomena. Right, it's a programmed cell death, we call. It's basically, the cell is programmed like that to commit suicide once they get the signal to rescue the whole body. Yes, and so basically it's a very similar phenomena to the animal. Only thing is that the plant's case, it doesn't heal. Once it's dead, and then that area is kind of dead cell cluster, and then can quarantine the pathogen in that dead cell cluster, and then stop the pathogen go around the whole body. So that is a whole system in the plant.
So is it fair to say that in large context, biology and ecology are intertwined?
Maybe I'm not ecologist. My understanding of the ecology is very, yeah, that's actually, maybe you can say so. Yeah. Thank you very much.
I'm gonna use that one. I'm gonna do. It's gonna easy. So it's already 5:22, which I wasn't aware of. It's a little bit late, so I think we should conclude our session. We could talk for another hour, really, But I'm inviting everybody to like maybe talk after. So we close the session right now. And thank you so much for people from home for connecting, for people here for coming here and like in this really bad weather. And come to April the 5th to our poetry reading. And it's going to be at like after sunset, so at 7:30 on, because we want complete darkness. And or if you're still interested in having more discussion, we'll have another session on symbiosis on April the 14th. So thanks for joining us. Check us out at artscisalon.com. And again, thank you so much for joining. Bye, everybody. Okay, I love the meeting. Thank you so much for letting us, like you could have come in early.